Aaron Rodgers left waiting at the windowsill as the Vikings reject him and move on to J.J. McCarthy season. It's the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Why, hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's a little special extra one today, live here, as a whole bunch of news has happened today, and I wanted to make sure that I got to it. Tomorrow morning, there's a crossover with Locked On Colts. Told him about Cam Bynum. He told me, Jake Arthur told me about Will Fries and Ryan Kelly, and we talked about the Daniel Jones situation and a whole bunch of stuff. So we just did like a whole crossover about it. That'll be tomorrow morning. Didn't want to disturb that, so let's just go live and talk about all the news today. So thank you so much to my hashtag everydayers for coming and hanging out every day, sometimes multiple times a day, which is what is happening today. And this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. So, I wanted to start with a QB update. So, this isn't like huge news if you're an everydayer. This isn't like a major change in your expectation, but Tom Pelissero tweeted this morning, the most definitive kind of rebuke we've seen yet. The Vikings have moved on. And from Aaron Rodgers, they're committing to J.J. McCarthy. Additional reporting that came out later from Kevin Seifert and others has said that, and Diana Rossini too, who's been kind of the one pushing this the most, has kind of said the door is still open, but he's like a fallback now. If something, if J.J. McCarthy gets the Teddy injury thing in camp, or if he just like super big bad sucks, then maybe they'll call him back. But for the time being, he's not an option, and obviously that That puts the big spotlight on J.J. McCarthy. He is the guy now moving forward, and it takes all this QB stuff out. I do not think it is a coincidence that this is happening, and then like 2 hours later, Cam Robinson signs with the Texans. I'm going to guess that the Vikings had gotten some kind of word on that, and that also changes the way that they approach backup QB. More on that in a little bit. But also, Rondale Moore signed, and I don't think I talked about Jeff Okudah yesterday, because I think I recorded that show without knowing that he had signed, or without mentioning that he had like officially signed too. He was just visiting. So a lot to get into, but first an autopsy on this just ridiculous Aaron Rodgers story. And again, I mean, it to me, it was a test of street smarts on whether or not you could suss out a smoke story when you see one. How is your smell test? Because your smell test should have sniffed this one out. It just never quite made sense for the Vikings to go for an expensive, old, albatross of a guy quarterback that was going to take over the locker room, take over the culture of the team, take over the identity of the team that has been very carefully and successfully crafted in Minnesota. There were a lot of reasons not to like that. And that's not just opinion. That was reports. That was reports from the Star Tribune and from even like big national voices that one of the big holdups with the Vikings stopping them from signing a future Hall of Famer at quarterback was that they don't think the guy will fit with everybody, which is a really nice way of saying they think the guy's a jerk. And that if people don't like him and they don't want to play with him, that might ruin things. Sloth in the chat, by the way, come live sometimes. If you're live, leave your thoughts in the chat, because you might interrupt my train of thought and I'll respond to you. But Sloth said if Favre didn't go from the Jets to the Vikings 16 years ago, nobody would have ever suggested this. I think that's a pretty good point. At least it wouldn't have gotten the same steam, because everybody wanted to be the umpteenth person to make the joke. But I also think that part of it is Minnesota clearly has a good structure to support a quarterback, which, by the way, is also a great reason to stay with the rookie that you just drafted. And that Aaron Rodgers and Kevin O'Connell know each other, like on a personal level. And so there's a relationship. So it makes sense for Aaron Rodgers to be like, I would love to play for that guy in Minnesota. It would be awesome. But my read on this never really changed. Aaron Rodgers would love to be in Minnesota. Minnesota not so stoked on him, and they were just doing due diligence. But the one thing I wanted to say about this in regards to due diligence is that over the whole course of me doing this podcast, I think I've been pretty consistent that it is really smart to test ideas that you take for granted. And a lot of us, maybe even me, take for granted that Aaron Rodgers is a bad idea and that the Vikings shouldn't do it, right? Just like that opinion that it wouldn't be a good decision and they shouldn't make it. We take for granted that everyone's going to agree that it's this like universally known truth. But those are the kinds of things that can get us in trouble. And those are the kinds of ideas that, especially when you're the one holding the levers and the millions of dollars and all the stakes in your hand, that you want to test that. So taking a little bit of time to think about it, I think is, to be honest, it would be a non-starter not to for me. Even though I think it's a really bad idea, you got to do the due diligence. That doesn't mean that you don't trust your rookie quarterback. It means that that guy hasn't played a down of meaningful football for you yet. And you should probably take a couple days and make sure that you're not letting a good opportunity go to waste. You do those days and honestly probably come out of it with even more conviction that you're making the right decision by putting your hand in his face and saying, go bother somebody else. Common Man 255, Rondale Moore Zoomcast. We will talk about Rondale Moore. Oh yeah, baby. A receiver that runs a 4.3 to get a live show. Yeah. We got a corner now that runs a sub 4.3, I think, in Isaiah Rodgers. I just learned that it probably was because his combine was here. Anyways, so it's nice to see the end of this, but really the lesson to take away is what I learned when the Vikings didn't up their offer to Daniel Jones and let themselves lose that battle to the Colts, which is, they're not having him compete. They're going to get a backup. And here is the thing now. So we'll do the comp pick update now real quick. Joseph Gonzalez, great timing. You ask, how is the Cam Robinson signing connected? Great question. So Cam Robinson signs in Houston. He signs for a $12 million deal that could be up to $14 million deal, right on the cusp of a 4th or 5th round comp pick that now goes to the Vikings. That cancels something else out now and uncancels the Daniel Jones pick. So there's a bunch of different dynamics here. But basically, if the Vikings want to sign a backup quarterback of their own, that guy can make anything up to $25 million. And as long as it's not a 3rd round comp pick, which is I'm calling 25 mil. That's a guess at the amount, but somewhere around there is going to be the cutoff. As long as it's not over that cutoff for the difference between a 3rd and a 4th, he will not cancel out the Sam Darnold pick. So it pretty much ices in that Sam Darnold pick unless the Vikings sign two new compensatory free agents. But we're running out of guys that would even be worth that. And then like at a certain point, it just becomes worth it to like wait till June 1st where it doesn't even count anymore. So that means that there are a few options and they're all pretty good. The Vikings could now just sign whatever QB they want. If they want to sign, I don't even know who's still out there, Carson Wentz, I don't care. And any compensatory free agent, they sign him. It cancels out the Cam Robinson pick that just came in. You get your 3rd round compensatory pick. Your free agency is good to go. You move on to the draft. We're happy, right? So it just works. Great. We did it. We saved the pick. Or you could get a little greedy about it and you could try to get your backup quarterback another way. You could either sign somebody who won't qualify for a comp pick, be they a Ryan Tannehill who got released, or somebody who will be so cheap that they won't even count for a comp pick. If you want to get like an unserious option, Sam Ellinger. I was just talking to Jake Arthur on Locked On Colts. We were talking about Sam Ellinger, like somebody like that, have him compete with Brett Rippon for the job. And then like, that's your quarterback room. Right. But if you want somebody a little better than that, somebody who's actually had a little bit more experience, you can do that. You would maybe even trade for somebody, right? Trade for, there was an idea floated to me today, Aiden O'Connell from the Raiders. If you send the Raiders anything less than a 2026 6th round pick, which I believe the Vikings still have one of them because they gained one and lost one in all the trading. So if you send them your 2026 6th round pick or 7th round pick or something like that, or even like a pick swap or something for Aiden O'Connell, if you can get that to work, then you might preserve a comp pick that's higher. So you spend a 6th round pick next year, you get Aiden O'Connell, in doing so, preserving a 4th round pick next year via the comp formula. So you can upgrade that pick and get a backup quarterback if you can swing it. That might be a little bit big brained. And of course, you got to actually like the guy. That's the most important thing. But there's so many names out there that it's not worth going over each and every one exhaustively. We'll just wait to see who it is. But I do think we'll find out soon because the Cam Robinson signing now enables them to go sign a new free agent and use some of the big money that they have left over. I do think some of that is also going to go like internally to stuff like giving Josh Metellus a pay raise, stuff like that. Plus, some of it might roll over and help them with their debts in 2026, which will now be a thing they're going to have to figure out a way to deal with. So that's all great. What it won't change is the comp pick formula probably didn't have a lot to do with what happened with Rondale Moore, which is that he signed with the Minnesota Vikings. So we will talk about that next. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings, this live weird one, is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to take your business to the next level. It gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Visit Upwork.com right now and you can post your job for free. You can find the right talent for your needs, a freelance expert who will be able to get the dang thing done fast and easy. Once again, that is at upwork.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Moving right along here with this special impromptu live show emergency. I'm not calling it an emergency pod, okay? I've been doing these like all week. This is just how free agency goes, but this is probably going to be the last one of these unless something huge happens. But Rondale Moore joins the Vikings. How does this change things? He's 24 years old. So, boy, are you injured? A formerly high draft pick? Do you kind of suck? Minnesota's the place for you. This is, to me, describes both Jeff Okudah and Rondale Moore. But the Rondale Moore thing is interesting to me. So where he fits in with the Vikings and where Okudah fits in with the Vikings are both kind of the same, where I think they're both going to be on the roster bubble. Like I would predict both of them. They'll probably both be on my 53-man roster prediction when it comes to that, draft notwithstanding. But I wouldn't guarantee it. I think they do have guys to beat, right? Like Jeff Okudah, I think he and Dwight McGlothern are fighting for a roster spot in the way that it looks right now. And maybe it comes down to who does more for you on special teams or just like who wins that 5th CB spot or whatever. And I think Rondale Moore is the same deal. So Rondale Moore, 2nd round pick in 2021, looked like he was going to be this like really dynamic. He's like an after catch player, one of these little tiny guys that's, really shifty with the ball in his hands. The Vikings haven't had one of those for a while. And he was actually, I think I suggested him in like a mock free agency in like February. I was like, oh, that'd be awesome. Like to get like we'd never have that guy. Never have the shifty little yak guy, but that's what Rondale Moore is. So it's nice to get like a different dynamic skill set. That said, there are a ton of big giant red flags that prevent me from looking at this as a guy that is immediately going to add a new dynamic to an offense with like bona fide superstars all over it. For one, there's the injury. So he suffers a knee injury. We never found out the details of that injury. It was never reported what the actual knee injury is, at least not that I could find. So if anybody can find it, send me the link at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com because I couldn't find it. Hard as I try, I could not find what the actual injury is, like which ligament or whatever. But whatever it was season ending. And the next thing we heard from him was that he was taking visits. So he visits with the Vikings, they let him out the door. He visits with the Bears, they let him out the door. He visits with the Jets, they let him out the door. So we can only speculate as to why he was being let out the door. But I think as good a guess as any is that they weren't loving the medicals that they were getting from him. If you're coming off a knee injury, part of that visit is going to be a medical check. How does that knee feel? Where are you at in your rehab from that knee? Do we trust it, right? Are you still running the same way and all that? Some of it might just be, a bad workout. Some of it might just be that he's asking for too much money, or it might not even be anything that nefarious. It might just be that, all right, thank you for the offer, but I do want to go check on some other ones. So he just did that for a little while. He was also going to go to the Titans, but the Vikings actually offered him the contract before he took that visit. So he turned around and came to Minnesota. Taylor Julius, William Percival Harvin would Percy Harvin was probably the last guy on the team that was like that. Like that, that dude was off the team more than 10 years ago, man. Like it's been a while. So Rondale Moore would provide something like that if healthy. And I think that if healthy is a huge if. Not necessarily is his knee better or not. Like, it'll heal over time, right? That will only ever be a short-term thing, but will he come back the same guy that he was before? And that guy was limited, fast, but you're never going to, get him to beat a 6'2" corner on a fade. As a blocker, good for his size, but in the best world, and he looked better a week later. Yeah, right. We were that a year-long rehab process, so we were just a couple days early to the end of it. No, so in the world where he works out, it can be really exciting, right? If you get past all of those ifs and you just allow yourself to have like a dynasty fantasy manager's brain about how everybody's going to work out that's on your team, it's a pretty exciting picture, right? You can give this guy bubble screens. You can send Addison and Jefferson deep, and if they overcommit to doing stuff deep, you can give him the ball underneath and punish and chew up all those yards underneath and all that great stuff. You can put him in a bunch and have him be like a useful player. And shoot, he returned a punt or two in college. Maybe that's a thing too. So I think that this slots in 1-for-1 as like a Brandon Powell replacement. And hopefully you get a little bit more out of him than that, and he can actually be part of a rotation and get a few manufactured touches on the jet sweeps and the bubble screens and stuff. That's like Addison and Jefferson can do that, but that's not their move. Like, they're not guys that are like juking and jiving and shifting. They're guys that are like nuanced route runners that get open downfield, and you don't want to use them on, 1-yard throws. You want to use them on 30-yard throws that can become explosive plays if they just catch the dang ball, which they're pretty good at. So a lot of ifs there, and I would definitely temper your excitement. There's a really cool ceiling on it, but I would temper your excitement on it. I do think that there's absolutely a world where this dude gets like cut in camp. And I wouldn't expect either of these guys to make enough money to really be worth covering it in a whole bunch of detail. But hey, if I'm wrong on that, we'll just circle back around. So again, tomorrow there's a crossover with Locked On Colts that has nothing to do with any of this. We talk about, Will Fries and Ryan Kelly and how much they meant to the Colts, and hopefully they can bring that same thing here. So I will see you all for that. A little bit of a shorter one here. Thanks for joining live. Thank you to the chat. That's all we got going on right now. And as always, Skol.